So first one, how the body applies force, okay? So very simply, force is the push or pull acting on a body or object, all right? So anything that has movement and touches another thing will have force. That force is then applied two ways, all right? Or force can be, I don't want to use the word applied. There are two components of force. There we go. Let's go with that. There is applied force and there is reactive force. Applied force is the force that we, the person or the human or the athlete, produces on objects such as a bat, a ball, a barbell, things like that, or on the ground. So right now I'm actually applying force into the ground. Now I'm not moving, so that force is just being applied through my weight and gravity, okay? Then there's the reactive force. So the reactive force is the force that is applied back to our body from the object or the ground, okay? And that force will generally always be equal to the applied force. So this is explained by Dr. Isaac Newton, if you remember that dude, and his third law, which says for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So what that means is that right now I'm standing on the ground, I'm applying roughly 70 kilos of force downwards, because that's how much I weigh. The ground, in turn, is applying 70 kilos of force back up at me, which keeps me upright and it keeps me on the ground. If there is an instance where the person applies more force than what the underlying surface can support, the surface will give way, okay? So for example, the ground, obviously a massive, object of mass being the earth, okay, can apply lots and lots of force. In fact, it can apply so much force that we can have, 3-point-something billion people pushing down on it all day, plus machines and objects and stuff, and the earth will apply an equal amount of force back so it doesn't move, okay? It doesn't shift left and right and stuff like that. However, so I'm walking on the ground, I'm applying force, the ground pushes back to me, which actually helps me move forward, okay? If I was walking on something which could not apply that same amount of force, so let's say I'm now going to walk on a piece of paper. Let's make it real simple. If I get a really long bit of paper, okay, and I put that paper between two chairs and I start walking on it, what do you think is going to happen? I'm going to take one step onto the paper and I'm going to fall straight through it, okay? Because that bit of paper cannot apply 70 kilos of force back to me and therefore it breaks, okay? So here is like a sporting example. This is a sprinter. I've tried to do the hair to give you the visualization that they're running that way, all right? They're running along and every time they take a step, they are applying force into the ground and the ground applies a reactive force back to that sprinter, propelling them forward, okay? So one of the ways that sprinters will train to improve their speed and their time and therefore be better than everybody else is by improving how much force they can generate into the ground. So to improve force, it can be done a combination of three ways. You can improve your speed, so the speed at which you contract something will generate more force. Your strength, so the contractile strength in which you apply that force can be improved, or you can train for both of them. You can try and contract, have stronger contractile strength and do it faster, all right, which is that explosive thing, all right? So improving your speed, improving your strength, or improving both will all equal an improvement in power, and power is expressed as work over time. So if you can do more work in the same time frame, you have improved your power, or if you can do the same amount of work in less time frame, you've also improved your power, or ideally you would train for both of them. You would improve your strength, which would increase the amount of work you could do, and you would improve your speed, which will decrease the amount of time it takes to do something, and therefore double edging, increasing your power. So power can be speed dominant or strength dominant. So speed dominant power is where people will focus more on improving their speed as opposed to their strength, and vice versa. Strength dominant power is where you focus on improving your strength more than speed. So speed dominant power is mainly like, for example, you think of sprinters, all right? So 100-meter sprinters, they will do, lots of resistance training activities to improve their strength, but most of their work is going to be at improving their speed, and therefore they have speed dominant power, as opposed to like a weightlifter who will improve strength dominant power, okay? For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. You need to remember that, all right? Because every time an athlete applies force to something, that something needs to apply the equal amount of force back to then improve their performance. All right, the next point is looking at how the body absorbs force. Now, you probably already do this and you're not even aware of it, or you are aware of it, but you never really thought about why and what's happening there. So force is actually absorbed in our joints. All the joints in your body will absorb force when they touch something. So me just touching this board right now, my joints in my fingers, phalanges, are absorbing force. How is that actually occurring, okay? Eccentric contractions. So remember, eccentric contraction is where a contraction occurs but the muscle lengthens, so not concentric, okay, will occur to evenly distribute the force across the soft tissue. So that's connective tissues as well as the muscles, so that injury does not occur. So when my fingers touch this board, okay, I can't do it in slow-mo. Slow-mo. How about if I go inside, I might try and do some editing video magic here. I've never tried this before. And I'll do some slow-mo. So if I angle my hand like this and I go,
okay, I'll see if I can slow-mo that. We'll see if that works.
so what's actually happening is when my finger hits something, or when any part of your body hits something, or when something hits your body, your muscles, okay, will contract. And so when they're contracting, they're actually going to absorb the force generated from that contact throughout the length of the muscle and the connective tissue itself. And therefore, you don't hurt yourself. Think about it this way. So with these 2 points, if an individual does not make eccentric contractions, the force will be absorbed by the bones themselves. And when that happens, bad things happen. Break, injury, fracture, dislocation. Something's got to give, okay? If the long elastic piece of something is not going to absorb a whole bunch of force, then the hard piece of something will absorb it instead, and they're not designed to do that. That's how things break, okay? So imagine this, right? I'm standing on, you know that little lip at the top oval to bottom oval out there, or even standing on the stage of the NPC or something like that, and you jump off that and you land on the ground, okay? When you jump and you land on the ground, instinctively you should probably bend. So you'll bend at the hips, you'll bend at the knees, you'll bend at the ankles. So if I can just do a jump here, all right? So I do a little bend, okay? Little pop and squat. And what's happening when I do that pop is that me hitting the ground, that force goes up through my feet, because remember I'm applying an applied force. I'm applying force to the ground when I land, and then the ground is going to shoot force back up through my feet, okay, because that's the reactive force. So it's firstly going to hit my ankles, okay, and then it's going to hit my knees, and then it's going to hit my hips, all right? So my ankles will absorb some force by doing an eccentric contraction. My knees will absorb some force by doing an eccentric contraction, and my hips will absorb some force by doing an eccentric contraction. So all of that force that is being generated back up to me is being absorbed. Now, if I jumped from a higher height, I'd probably need to do more bend. So if I jumped from the top of this, for even just the top of this table down to the ground, instead of doing a little pop squat, I'd probably have to go down and up again. So my muscles, therefore, are doing a longer eccentric contraction because it needs to absorb more force. So I don't know how much sciencey stuff you guys know, but the rate of gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. So you take that ratio in relation to my body traveling through air downwards, okay, so 70 kilos at 9.8 meters per second squared. The higher you jump from, the more force you are generating into the ground, and therefore the more reactive force you get back up, all right? Hopefully that makes sense. So then we go back to this point, right? If an individual does not make eccentric contractions, the force will be absorbed by the bones instead. So imagine now I jump from the top oval onto the bottom oval, and I lock my legs, hips, and ankles. I just lock them out now, and I jump off. What do you think is going to happen? I don't even want to do it. I don't want to think about it. Dislocation central is what's going to happen. Everything in my body is just going to be and just go all funky and stuff. That's why I also when you watch rugby league and people get tackled from the side and whatever, because there's nothing there to absorb force, because the abductors and stuff don't bend that way, and therefore you get major dislocations. So that's bad. Alternatively, number 2, if the soft tissue contraction cannot match the incoming force, the remainder of the force left over will be absorbed by the bones, and then bad things once again happen. So I jump off the top oval to the bottom oval, and I do like a little bend and stuff, and I can absorb that force in my legs. It's good. I jump from the stage in the MPC onto the ground. It's a higher height, so I have to do more of a bend to absorb all that force, but it's all good, okay? I then get onto the MPC roof, and I jump off onto the oval, okay? So when I hit that ground, you know, I'm just pretty much going to crumple down. Everything is going to bend. So I'm going to like fully bend at my ankles. I'm going to fully bend at my knees. I'm going to fully bend at my hips to try to get my muscles to eccentrically contract and absorb all that force. But there's still probably going to be too much force generated from that jump that my body can absorb. And then the rest of it will be absorbed by my bones and bad things happen. This is also works like if we just take away from the jumping example, if you're like throwing and catching a ball, okay? Someone throws a ball at me, and if you just like catch it dead on, like, boom, okay? It generally hurts and it stings, all right? So what will usually happen is that when someone throws a ball, you catch it and then you'll like give like that, you know? You'll be like, ah, or you're like, ah. So what's happening is that eccentric contraction, so the ball hits my hand and the muscles in my arms and my wrists and my forearms and my lats, for example, all contract to absorb that force, and therefore I don't get injured and I win the game because I caught the thing. So that's how the body absorbs force. All right, so the last part of this video is looking at applying force to an object. All right, and yes, I had an outfit change. Well done. So Newton's second law, all right? So remember we had Newton's third law, which said for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, and that looks at applied force and reactive force. But Newton's second law states that basically objects will only change direction or their current momentum when an external force is greater than the original momentum. Okay, in other words, this pen sitting here on this desk, all right, will only move from where it's sitting on a desk when an external force is greater than its current one. Like that, all right? There was nothing pushing on it before. I pushed on it, it changed direction, all right? So, I've got a couple of examples to sort of explain what's going on here. My first example, the greater of the force application, or the greater of the force applied, the greater the speed and acceleration. And we know that we can apply force you know, through speed, strength and power, etc. So we've got two guys here, okay? They're both soccer players. They both have the same size soccer ball, except this guy's got standard legs and this guy's been working out. He's got like tree trunk legs, all right? So he weighs more, and specifically his legs are more muscular. Now if they both struck the ball with the same force, because this guy's legs weigh heavier, all right, remember mass is part of our force production, his ball will travel further, even though they both kicked it with the same strength. So kick it with the same strength, this guy has more mass behind his kick, therefore ball travels further, okay? I'll rub this off and get number 2 on. All right, so the other way to think about this, number 2, the greater the mass of an object, the greater the force required to move it, all right? So we're applying force to an object. So once again, I've got 2 soccer players. They're the same dude this time, okay? Same height, same weight. They kick the ball with the same strength. But this time we're looking at the difference in the object itself, not the person. So this is a standard soccer ball. It's made from leather. He kicks it and it travels this far, all right? Now this guy, we've got him a soccer ball, but it looks like a soccer ball, but it's really a medicine ball, all right? Joke's on you. And so he kicks it with the same strength as the leather. So when he kicks the leather ball, it would have traveled this far. He does that exact same kick, but it's a med ball, and it only goes that far, all right? Because the greater mass of the heavier object will require more force to travel the same distance. Last one to mention, applying force to an object when we're doing things in rotation. Okay, so most of the time we're always talking about head-on things. So whether you're colliding with somebody or you're throwing something or kicking something and it's all going in that direction, all right? But there are some times when you're doing things round and round, like the hammer throw. there is two basically special names that we give those applied and reactive forces, being centripetal force and centrifugal force. So centripetal force is force directed towards the body, and centrifugal force is the reacting force directed away from the body. So if you were like, I don't know where you are watching this video, but if you kind of like stand up out of your chair, hold a couple of things in your hands, doesn't matter, glasses, cups, whatever, and start spinning around, you'll slowly feel weight pull away like to the outside extremities of your body, all right? Well, even actually in a more basic sense, if you just stand like this with holding nothing and you start spinning around and around, you start getting pins and needles in your fingers because your blood in itself is actually getting pushed out to the outside of your body, okay? So that force going out away from your body is centrifugal force, okay? Because it's being generated from the inside and it's going outwards. So things like the hammer throw, what's happening is that if you pick up the hammer, which weighs a fair bit, and you start spinning around and around, you're going to be causing a fair amount of centrifugal force away from the body. The athlete must match that force via technique or mass themselves or a combination of both with an equal amount of centripetal force, bringing it back towards the body, otherwise they're going to fall over. So if you pick up a hammer and start spinning it around and you can't match the force being generated, you're just going to go with the hammer, okay? Or alternatively, if you think about it in the opposite direction, if you do pick up a hammer and start spinning it around and you're generating centrifugal force, but then you counterbalance with too much centripetal force, you'll fall backwards, all right? So remember, according to Newton's third law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and that always needs to be matched to improve performance. So to summarize force production can be improved via speed training, so training to be able to move your body faster, okay? Strength training to improve your contractile strength of your muscles. Power training, which is a combination of speed and strength training, so it's like doing resistance training, but you do it in an explosive manner. Technique refinement, or simply by increasing a person's mass. All of these things will improve force production, okay? And ideally, athletes will train for multiple aspects of this and not just focus on one, because it is multiplicative. Finally, to understand the whole concept of this video, athletes who can maximize their applied force, all right, will experience greater reactive force, because remember, they're equally matched, and therefore it will propel them forward faster if they're a runner, able to jump, or they'll be able to jump, throw, or kick further and higher, depending on the speed and event, etc. All right? And that's force. Thanks, buddy.